So we encourage you to, as much as possible, try to give accurate reportage so far as our partnership and engagement with you is concerned. We have here my colleague, the Deputy National Communication Director, Dr. Sidi Ukru, who is here to support our director. We have the host of constituency officers and regional officers here. Because of time, I will not be able to mention their names. We also have members from the TESCOM fraternity who are here to support the press conference today. Without any further delay, I humbly invite to the podium the National Communication Director of Communications, Dr. Richard Ayamba, who will be taking us through the press conference today. Director, you are welcome.
My sincere apologies for the delay in starting. They wanted to do this very early in the morning. Due to some factors beyond our control. First, let me welcome you all here. Culture requires participation and vigilance. Those entrusted with power must be continually evaluated against the promises and real actions they take in government. New Patriotic Party has invited you here, want to address you in that spirit. We have a responsibility as citizens to hold a conversation this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Democratic Congress, while in opposition, claimed Ghana's economy had collapsed, and that only new leadership could restore hope. I'm sure you remember the 2024 campaign. In contrast, by the end of 2024, this is the fact as we have it, data showed inflation had fallen from the very high 54.1% in December 2022 to the mid-20s. GDP growth projections exceeded 3%, and the exchange rate had stabilized. These figures signal the period of stabilization and recovery, directly countering the earlier narrative by the NDC that our economy had collapsed. The main issue, ladies and gentlemen, is not whether there were challenges before the NDC took over in 2025. There were challenges. Before that, there were challenges before 2025, and you know this very well, that our economy experienced some strong headwinds, and the matters that led to that, you know, COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. But before that, this is part of the conversation that is not often said. Earlier, at the end of 2024, show recognition. Inflation had come down from the high 54, declined steadily to somewhere about 20, in the mid 20% by 2024 when we're leaving office. The decline in this positive decline in these economic indicators was driven by tighter monetary policy, exchange rate stabilization or exchange rate stability, and improved fiscal discipline. Now you hear the finance minister talks about fiscal discipline as though they invented the word. That was actually happening, and this Nana-Addo Bawumia government had actually done a lot to actually stabilize the economy for them. So fiscal discipline, as they like to talk about it, is not a new word in Ghana's economic lexicon. Unemployment, ladies and gentlemen, you remember very, very well, was decreasing, and cost of living was improving before we left office. Again, real GDP, after slowing down during the COVID-19 crisis and the Russia-Ukraine crisis, surpassed 3% projection, as then it was driven by services and industry growth. The economy, ladies and gentlemen, expanded and not contracted. And this is very important to note, that when we're leaving office, this economy was expanding and not contracting. You remember very well, we left office with a GDP growth of 5.7 when we left office. So that is a clear indication that the economy was expanding and not contracting. The city, which is now the solution to all NDC's problem, when you ask them, they say, well, the city is stabilized, the city is stabilized. As a matter of fact, the city that fell sharply in 2022, and all of us know what happened there, had stabilized by 2024 when we left office. And the evidence is there for you to verify and share with your viewers and listeners. And there was also evidence of high reserves, which you know about the Gold for Reserve program that helped Ghana build strong reserves. So we left office with just about a little over 9 billion in reserves for the NDC. Fiscal consolidation, as I said earlier, was achieved. This has helped altogether to reduce imported inflation, especially on fuel and food prices. Today, with this recent increase in fuel, I think that the cost of diesel today is higher than it was when we left office. And these are some of the facts that we need to underscore for ourselves so we can hold this government accountable to deliver as it promised freely in opposition. On the fiscal side, the government made progress on consolidation, commitment to primary surplus under the IMF program, enforced spending discipline, I've indicated that, and better revenue mobilization followed that. These actions built investor confidence and reduced macroeconomic uncertainty. This was the situation before we left office. These indicators confirmed Ghana entered 2025, which is when the NDC came into office. Ghana entered 2025 with economic recovery, not collapse, as the NDC would like to tell us all the time. When you hear them and they come to your station, they say, oh, the economy was bad, the economy was bad. It wasn't. It wasn't. And we have to stay on the facts and not the propaganda. The NDC is always busy feeding all of us, and sometimes I think that you allow them to carry on with that propaganda. The economy entered 2025 as a recovering economy, not a collapsed economy. So maybe one of these days when they come to your offices, your media house, and they are saying those falsehoods, I think that's important for you to correct them. President Mahama inherited this progress, but ladies and gentlemen, instead of building upon it to benefit the citizens, to benefit Ghanaians, this government is reversing the painstaking gains that was bequeathed to it by the Akufo-Addo administration. And I say painstaking because we all remember the difficult choices that had to be made in trying to achieve debt sustainability in our country. That has become a gain for this government today, as we have debt to GDP ratio right now in a very good place, and we are trending towards probably about 55 as projected by the IMF program. This difference is not just numbers. It is it's a felt experience, and it is expressed in the hardships that Ghanaians are experiencing. And these are reported on your portals, how difficult things have become in our country. It is not us saying, but you are the ones reporting them, and we are reading them as we report. Governance should be measured by its impact on citizens' welfare, not just macroeconomic stability on paper. And that's what we see today. They tell you that the city is stable, but then when you go to the market, your cost is going up. Transportation cost is going up. Your utility bills are going up. So you wonder what exactly is going on when they tell you that the city is stable and the economy is booming. We told workers when President Mahama in 2025 stormed the organized labor negotiation room, he told them that, oh, the economy is so bad, and that if they allow him to agree to a 10% base pay increase, when the economy improved, all of us will benefit. Sure enough, they told us that the economy improved unprecedented in 2025. But when it came to negotiating with organized labor for wage increases, he couldn't even do the 10% that he was able to do with a very bankrupt economy they claimed in 2025. But they said the economy has grown. So if indeed that was the case, why didn't President Mahama give workers a higher wage increase as he promised them in 2025? So this government, by this measure, the President Mahama and the NDC administration is failing, because the divide between economic recovery data and everyday reality is growing most noticeably in many aspects of our economy. And I'll talk about one particular one that has become a big problem, which is the cocoa sector. Cocoa farmers are feeling the pinch of the so-called stabilizing economy, inherited economy that was expanding instead of sustaining it. The NDC is vanquishing that game, and farmers are, among all of us, at the very bad receiving end of that. And we'll talk about that briefly, and we'll talk about the youth also briefly. In 2025, global cocoa prices rose due to supply constraints. Ghana had an opportunity to boost farmers' incomes and rural economies by striking while the iron was hot, to secure a forward sale contract that would have locked in higher price for our cocoa farmers. But the NDC and cocoa board sat on their hands and watched whilst the market tanked. And after the prices fell, the NDC organized a big emergency cabinet meeting, only to come up with a price cut for farmers. Now, the difficulty with that is that it wasn't the farmers' fault. It wasn't the farmers' fault. It was the fault of the government. It was the fault of Cocoa Board not to be alive to their training responsibilities. It was their negligence that led to that missed opportunity. But when push came to shove, the NDC government decided to hand the hardworking farmers, hardworking cocoa farmers, the short end of the stick. The government imposed a 29%, about 28.6% price haircut on farmers, which then means that on each bag of cocoa, farmers were losing 1,038 Ghana cedis per bag. 1,038 Ghana cedis per bag. Most cocoa farmers, on average, produce, say, about 10. The medium ones will produce about 100 bags annually. Now, imagine the loss. For those who are producing about 10 bags, they're losing close to about 10,000. 380 Ghana cedis. For those who are producing close to about 100, are losing somewhere about 103,800 Ghana cedis on the 100 bags. I have a quick question, and I think that we should all ponder those questions. How fair is this price cut to cocoa farmers? Would President Mahama's appointees, I won't talk about the president himself, would President Mahama's appointees give up their salary due to revenue shortfalls? The finance ministry, perhaps Ghana Revenue Authority, says that government revenue is not performing. The NDC appointees accept salary cut indefinitely, just accept it. They won't. The question is, if they won't take a salary haircut, why are they offering that to farmers? Is it because President Mahama and the NDC thinks that farmers are easy targets? Is it that they think that farmers are pushovers? Is it because the farmers will lay quiet and take it, and so therefore they can give them a salary haircut when indeed what is bringing it about is the NDC's own fault through Cocoa Board's inability to read the market and strike when the iron was hot. Ladies and gentlemen, this is insensitive, this is wrong, and this is misgovernance on steroids. These failures are not isolated. They have severe consequences. Cocoa farmers now face significant losses that undermine their welfare, the larger rural economy, and threatens Ghana's export revenue from cocoa and jobs. What is worse, ladies and gentlemen, is government's response. You can take political criticism from the New Patriotic Party and say, oh, it's politics, even though it is not, because when people's lives are caught in the balance, there's no amount of politics you can use to justify it. But when the Catholic Bishops' Conference sat, looked at the issue, and called on the government to reverse the crude shaving of 1,038 Ghana cedis off the price per bag for farmers, referencing its likely impact on rural areas and livelihoods in our rural communities, this government ignored them. His Excellency John Dramani's government ignored the humble appeal of the Catholic Bishops' Conference. Now that is insensitive. That is insensitive. So the government ignored them and is continuing with this harmful policy that I can tell you is aimed at killing the cocoa sector, because what it's likely to do is to force farmers to choose away from cropping cocoa anymore, because they are in that business, they are in that enterprise for their livelihoods. They are not in it for fun. They are in it to take care of their families and take care of themselves. And so if government's abuse of its monopoly, because you can't sell cocoa to anybody in Ghana but to Cocoa Board. And if government, because it has that power, it can abuse it and cause farmers to lose as much as 1,038 Ghana cedis. If I were a cocoa farmer, I'll think twice next season to plant one or to expand my farm. And that decision may affect Ghana's exports, which inevitably will affect our foreign exchange earnings, and therefore our current account will suffer in terms of inflows. This demonstrates, ladies and gentlemen, that Ghana cannot, and when I mean Ghana, I mean you cannot rely on an NDC promise, because contrary to what haircuts they are giving to cocoa farmers, you remember, you were part of the campaign in 2024, the NDC actually said they will pay cocoa farmers more. They told all of us that they would treat cocoa farmers better than the New Patriotic Party. They mentioned high amounts as though like it is just there to be given and we will not give it. 6,000, 7,000, they promised they will pay. That's what they said to win power. And now they have come to office. Even what the NPP was paying, which was 3,100 before they took over, they can't pay that. They cannot pay that. The NDC came to office, increased cocoa price twice, altogether about some 500 cedis and 25 of some 425 Ghana cedis. Altogether, they've increased it just about that much. But they have reduced it more than they have increased it. But they promised they will pay them more. So the question is, can we take NDC's promise seriously? Because they promise one thing and deliver the worst form of what they have promised. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just a mismanagement that we're seeing in the cocoa sector. is a consequential failure and disappointment of the people that we, or Ghanaians, must make the NDC pay for it at the polls when the time comes. This is because the pain the government is putting farmers through could have been avoided. Could have been avoided had Cocoa Board's management not been negligent of their responsibilities. And this is where I'd like to commend the mighty minority in Parliament, the minority MPP caucus, led by the Honorable Alexander Markins, for their steadfast effort to defend and empower cocoa farmers in these trying times, to let them understand that what is happening, we will stand with them, and that we will not leave them, and that we will let them understand that the government have a better way, or there are better ways to deal with these matters, and that if we were in government, cocoa farmers would not have seen this reduction. So whilst we advocate with them, while we support them, whilst we advocate for them, it is inherent promise and commitment that this will never happen. And this, if it's possible, under new Patriotic Party government, cocoa farmers will not see these crude haircuts. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk about a similar unfulfilled promise and failure by the NDC government in the area of youth employment. Youth unemployment is on the rise in our country, and that one, you don't need any soothsayer to tell you that. Conditions are worsening, youth can't find jobs, but meanwhile, the NDC promised they will give jobs to our young people. And many who, in good spirit, voted for the NDC are today regretting in droves. You saw what happened at the Airwax Stadium, where the recruitment, eventually now that we see, was a fraction of what numbers went out there for the recruitment. Fortunately, about 6 of our brothers and sisters, young brothers and sisters who were just seeking to find employment, to serve our country, lost their lives because the NDC could not create opportunities for them as they promised. The NDC promised us, the young people of this country, a 24-hour economy. We promised that, and we told them it wasn't possible. They told us we didn't understand, that we didn't know. But a year on, we are only hearing about authority. If it was about a 24-hour authority they wanted to establish, I can guarantee you that nobody will vote for that. Because there are so many of these authorities in the country, and the jobs they are creating are finite. We understand what they can do. They are regulatory authority. They have to regulate other enterprises to be able to create the jobs. If that's what they are coming to do, they are not going to create the jobs. The environment for the jobs must exist. And we said that the possibility of a 24-hour economy is demand-driven. It's demand-driven. It follows the demand. And they told us no, but now they have created authority. How is the authority going to create demand? If private enterprise, if production is not going on, if demand for products that companies are producing does not exist, creating an authority will not create demand. There will be no 24-hour economy. This 133 they talk about is a fallacy. It's not going to happen. It's a lie. And that's why I say that we have all become witnesses to this the hard way, that we cannot take the NDC's promises seriously. We can't put any premium on it. Because from the get-go, people should be clear in their mind that this whole thing about 24-hour economy was for votes. We promised free SHS, and we did. And when we promised free SHS, it was not as if it was easy. The NDC didn't believe it. They told us it was not possible, and we did it. That's how you keep a promise. That's how you make a promise and keep it. So when we did promise, we delivered. But they promised 24-hour economy. It is not happening. It will not happen. I can tell you that. Sadly, it is the young people of our country who are going to suffer that disappointment. Over a year in office, little action has been taken. And as I said, what we have is an authority designed to benefit cronies, associates, people walking about in the corridors of power. They are the ones going to be getting these appointments at the authority, but not the youth that was on the streets, that was canvassing, that hope, that prayed that there would be a change, as the NDC told them that that was the only way that Ghana could go forward. And so they believed it, and they voted. It is not they who would get a job. So when anytime we tell them and they tell us back in your studios that, oh, but we have created the authority, let them know that that authority is not going to create jobs for my younger brother at home. It's rather going to create jobs for their cronies, their friends, and their families. Not the young person who needs a job, honestly needs a job, and believe in that fake promise of the NDC. So sadly, youth unemployment and underemployment persist and is worsening. Many young people are trapped in informal and unstable work. Rising graduates unemployment shows deeper evidence of how this government has no clue how it is going to solve this very, very important problem. The lack of clear employment opportunities raise significant concerns about national security and development. Campaign rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen, has not turned into practical programs and gains for our young people, sadly. However, in a desperate attempt, and the president feels it, in a desperate attempt to pull a fast one on us, the president at the State of Nation address said he has created over 1 million jobs. You were there, the cameras caught it. That cannot be a slip of tongue. Cannot be, it wasn't. So immediately after the State of Nation, he was fact-checked. It became abundantly clear that President Mahama overestimated, inflated the number of jobs he has created by some 670,000. Can you imagine that? 670,000. How do you make that mistake? Ghana Statistical Service data shows some 330,000. 670 because he knows his government has failed to create jobs. So what does he do? Inflate it. That's what the president did. The State of Nation is a serious platform. And I can tell you that the handlers of the president took time, painstaking effort to prepare that statement, and it was not a slip of tongue. Intentional overestimation of the numbers to create a false impression that they are doing something which they are not. And that has been their stock in trade. Propaganda, using media operations to address matters that borders on bread and butter issue. When somebody is hungry, you can't talk sweet enough for the person to feel their stomach. It's bread, that one you can't do it. They talk sweet in opposition, now it's bread and butter issue. It's an hour for them to deliver, they can't deliver. So what does it do? Inflate the number of jobs. It will interest you that even if you go to look at the 330,000 jobs that they're talking about, it's not a job you'll be proud of to have. It's not a job that will pay you a sustainable wage. It's not a job that you will go home and tell your parents that yes, indeed, you took me to school and I've got that job. The balance of them are construction jobs. So this government is not creating jobs for our young people. And soon enough, it's become clear, but it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Let's talk about one other matter which is of concern, and the rising fuel costs that we have seen recently, and that is too rapid. And it pushes one to ask, where is this stability they were talking about? Where is this thing they talk about? The CD is strong, the fundamentals were there. and we're trying to create an impression they have done something. When we all know, since they came into office, there hasn't been any transformational policy the NDC has put in place. They are merely continuing and implementing the policy principles that were set in place. That's pretty much what they're doing. But they said that they have achieved something. Now, instead of demonstrating capacity and the dexterity to come up with measures to cushion the Ghanaian people, at first notice, they want to increase or they allow the fuel prices to go up. They won't take responsibility for it the same way they did to cocoa farmers. They will transfer the blame. They will make cocoa farmers suffer. All of us, I hear about it a lot. From where I sit, I get calls, I get messages all across the country. And if there were any experiments you and I can do, and I give you my phone to go through my WhatsApp messages, you understand. So how they manage to trick Ghanaians to believe, remotely believe, that the NDC can actually deal with what I'm saying is beyond me. And somehow they tricked all of us into thinking that, oh wow, the NDC can fix it. And the evidence is here for us to see that the NDC's promise does not match its delivery in government. And instead, Galamsey problem persists and is demonstrably getting worse. On the labor front, you'll recall recently, I think there's a 2-week reprieve that COSAG has given to finalize negotiations with the government. But there is tension at the labor front. Labor relations reflect a broader pattern of government strain. Tensions with COSAG indicate underlying issues of trust, consultation, and harmony. There have been more industrial strikes before the COSAG one recently, namely the Colleges of Education Teachers Association of Ghana, CTAG, the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, the National Identification Authority. Remember, they also had a demonstration, Teachers and Education Workers Union TEU, and the Technical University Senior Administrators also had that. And so public sector workers are essential part of policy implementation, and any strain in relations with organized labor can undermine administrative effectiveness and delivery of government services and staff morale. But we see a lot of that because conditions of work of all our brothers and sisters and mothers who work in the public sector is nothing to write home about. And I indicated to you earlier, when President Mahama came to office, he told them to accept a 10% increase, and when it becomes, when the economy gets better, he will give them more. And he didn't give them more, he gave them less. He gave them 10. 9 is not more. We gave them 9 instead of more. One issue that we've been talking about recently a lot, and that is to do with governance ethics and conflict of interest matters that have arisen. Concerns about governance ethics and conflict of interest raise fundamental questions about public trust. Allegations regarding the president's use of his brother's jet is one that strikes at the heart of public conflict of interest. And in fact, it borders on the president's own code of conduct. And this is especially important when the brother of the president, Mr. Ibrahim Mahama, has interest or is involved in government contracting. He's interested in our natural resources, he operates in that space. And so for him to be doing or to be seen, to be blurring the line, the separation between him as a brother and the president as a president of the republic is dangerous, because then after a while, you and I will get used to it because he's using his brother's plane. So if if his brother facilitates for him to go and buy the diamond mines or give him the Nidahini or that voter, it becomes normal because we have seen it. Familiarity, they say, breeds contempt. So when we begin to see the two as one, today we see his brother in his private jet, tomorrow we see the president in it. After a while, it becomes normal. You accept it, that it's okay. It's okay. It normalizes what ought not to be normalized. It's a terrible thing that is happening, and I think that we must speak against it. We must resist it, that this does not continue. Even when these matters were raised, I hear people from the Jubilee House, the government spokesperson, our own good brother, Ibn Safuseri, were questioning and arguing with Ghanaians and saying, if he uses his brother's plane, what's wrong with it? And the question I want to ask them is that, so is it okay for Mr. Ibrahim Mahama to exercise presidential powers? Is it okay? Because the two are one. We are not in their relationship. So if he can fly in his best plane, bring my brother's plane, I'll fly in it. Can you also just say, bring me, let me come and chair cabinet meeting? Can you do that? Is that okay if that happens? Is he not doing that already? I told some media house that this perhaps will be giving some presidential liberties to that flight that his brother owns, because the president of Ghana uses it. So if he goes to certain airports, they say, oh, that was a flight that the president used. Certain liberties will be accorded. That's a breach of national security. That's a breach of national liberty that such individuals should not have. So that is all, that is for us, that is the reserve of the state. It cannot become a private domain for the president and his brother to exchange as though they have it for themselves. It is not a private domain, it's a public domain, and the president is a public servant and not a private person to be using his brother's assets as though the state cannot provide. So Mr. President's use of his brother's jet should provoke our collective outrage. And we must send a clear message to the president that we will not stand for it, because the risk it poses to Ghana is too serious to ignore, especially considering that the president was involved in some conflict of interest matters earlier regarding a certain Ford expedition in the past. So that tendency is there, that history is there to be mindful of. That should guide us and not fall in that trap anymore. It is the responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, of we, the Ghanaian people, of we, the taxpayers, to provide for the president's movement. It is the responsibility of the state to provide for the president's movement, not his brother. And we must be clear about President Mahama and the NDC. And I've shown you some evidence. Farmers are earning less for their hard work. Young people are pounding the streets even harder without finding opportunities. Opportunities are not simply available, while the NDC dilly-dallies with its grand promise of creating a 133 job opportunities for our young people. That promise was not kept and will not be kept and cannot be kept because it is not a practical promise that was given. It was a hoodwink, was a vote-searching promise pulled out of left field to deceive young people to vote for it. Again, cost of living is rising, and that is occasioned and worsened recently by the increase of fuel prices. At the same time, serious questions about governance and integrity are emerging at the highest level. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not a failure of the NDC government to deliver. It is a grand betrayal of the trust of the people of Ghana that was given them on December 7th to govern this country after they have engaged in a systematic deceptive act to tell us all that they have a magic wand, which after a year we have seen they don't. If this is how, and I want us to ponder on this, if this is how the NDC manages recovery, then Ghanaians must ask, what will happen, or what will the NDC do if a real crisis does happen? They inherited a recovering economy, and this is how they are managing it. Imagine that a real crisis on the scale of COVID-19 happens. How will they handle it? Already I've seen indication of how they will handle it, because in less than 3 weeks, they said Iran is their problem, and so they have to increase fuel prices. They have not made any plans at all to cushion you and I. And so that should give you an indication that if real crisis come, the NDC will leave us all hanging. And this is the reason, this is the point I would want to invite you to shed all the propaganda the NDC is making against the New Patriotic Party, and ponder how Ghana was in the first 3 years of Nana Addo Dankwa administration before the misfortune, and also ponder how we came out of that crisis, how we lived them a recovering economy, how we were able to build back on the back of that timeless promise. To say that we know how to bring back the economy, we don't know how to bring back a dead person. And indeed, we did bring back the economy. The NDC inherited it in 2025, except that they are unable to translate the gains into meaningful opportunities for our people. And that's why I think that we should punish them at the polls in 2028 to ensure that we get back to a good day where the New Patriotic Party will give honest effort in trying to address the development needs and aspirations of our people. Thank you very much. I think we can take a few questions.
Really?
Do we have any key network? So briefly, Janila Kane said, NDC for Babel 2025. Now, MPP, Ghana economy. Ghana economy, I say, now the back of to be a CSC, Ghana economy, as Nigeria announced, we say, the Metro Obama or now say, Santo Obama MPP, the other Ghana should put you to, and a Ghana for 80 here, Obama NDC. So they're not being canon for the before NDC for media, now Ghana economy, indicators, and I said evidence I will from IMF sources, World Bank sources, Minister of Finance sources. Or when you know, they say now, Ghana economy no, a silly now so. Abra COVID, a buyer, and say, free 2017, 18, 19. Ghana economy, what is you Nigeria, the one. It is Accra, Ghana, and I said, it is what can I say? And I said, the sizes are so different. I said, Nigeria for economy, a super year, more than 100 and more million people. And Ghana, 32 or 33 billion. The land size, Masase Kakra, economy no SUE. But 2019, I was a capacity to share a group, I say, Africa, I say, the Brena, say, Ghana, economy, no, and who are economy in Nigeria. It is already a category foreign direct investment. Sikadu about Ghana, I need a call Nigeria, not the about Ghana, and also. The call Nigeria. I say, a month for the war, a man on it, you will see capacity a year, mana, and see a young fast war, na mo yo musika fi America e fi he fa no mo dia ma omo hu se Ghana be mo omo fa so chain de omo do pa ko nya no Nigeria na kire o se sa 2019 na Ghana economy no na economy ni yi na sa 2019 economy wie no December mo hono na ete COVID kakra na fi ade be ti atisi ma Ghana economy no ye starting na nyina traffic enti sa ohaw no ema dia na ye start here 2017 2018 e also 2019 ye di abodi wo wiase afane nyina se Ghana eka economy sa omko woni pa wo wiase afane nyina we ye IMF data ne kire se Ghana kasa do no but enam se yade sa minimum dina ha be link we se yesesi na bitia me ya na say bibi ha mesisi na say ya ge bi bom ya bia na minute ago me mo jina ha e bi liko mitumi e me yesa na ye me enti economy na jira na so e san say covid ba ye be puso economy ni ti bia sa fa na nyina nya Ghana e na economy no e mo ba asa e ni kakra ni ye ya 2020 economy now grew 7% from 2017 on average, 2017, 18, 19. 2020 they take off from 0.5%. And I mentioned here 2021. Yes, I think I go to 5.36. 2022 budget, November 2021. And then they call Parliament. Okay. Sa COVID ba ye ni o hawo afri mu ba ye na ye se ho ye tra fie aban se sika e de boy mu ban wo kai asema president ko for do kai say COVID ya be the decision the policy e say we boni pa ho ban say make say we dey wo yes I economy no ka tete apan 79 yo se there say me yes na ni ba ni we me den akonyane o but the economy ni dey say ya na ye born pa ho ban ya ye dey free mu fi a e betumi aye bumaden e the economy na ba biu enti ampa ku faado e ye kwan bi afa kwan bi aso be ki sure say Ghana for etumi ya TDD no more no 2022 budget I dey call 2021 November and ye dey levy 2 mu say ye levy na ye mfa entity kama ya ko and this is what someone take that no kasa for the first time in a long time, they are passing budget. I implemented budget, but the revenue now, they a budget in way they are passing. I was in May, sometimes as they ever passing e-levy tax handle, creating problems. Now every 1 of February, now Russia didn't pay frontier massive. No, so they shares affecting. Yes, the Kai during that time before UK, I see a balance never far play on the show there. This day when they 2 before no extra kit and idea when you to give me that now at the chance the balance never far play because workers in London were agitating for pay increase because inflation has gone up in London. I'm sure. But there are more media and Timothy is asking the highest level of inflation in UK decisions. But so difficult decision is waiting now. They take a mindful say, and then no actually no. It will be 2022 inflation could be 54.1. But through a Jumading, any with them the power, any Ghana for Masadi Dani. Until before I free up 2025, no, I'm at NDC for about now economy, no, sorry, I'm the other. I say, NDC for mobile, no, Kakra also, a bit to me, I hear Abuano, now my pigeon will be here, they are my pigeon. But on by a month to be another side, the art, I want to be another side. But someone to be here, the side, and can never can be a bow pushing. And a war here, kind of Iran, Israel, for America, for you. Can you say that? I say, I said, yeah, 2 fuel. And then this war, I was so changed after I Because okay, I'm going to say na petrol about from and then diesel before they change brand now and the work available. Every day somebody come back. It's an indication say no man a G7. And it's the share boss say a youth and youth employment. Now I'm a 24-hour economy and then 24-hour economy and by end to mean bounce so you can say I dare end to mean yes I said you must count and yes I net. Say you know hey so guys will not control a nursing for a registered nursing for exam, no about the NS. Abrawan call school. A school nurse will as when you're signing as well wrong size exams. So about the registered nurse. And yet I say, so by 24-hour economy. As I say, a man for no per se a toy here. And as again, I will turn and as he producing the Ghana, a man for penny good work. It is a year and a pound to 5 o'clock now. They are producing and so tall. Enti yenye ma ebi pon 5 wa ebi sombra de ebi sombra sa tibia no mu na obetumi aye 24 ye kai bia na is for that ye na ebi mu be na abai ye kai na ani ejina mu and then ade omo say ebeye eduma aba ebegunu no aba be ye eduma authority ama penifo ai bobo tie mo ase call retirement e kotena ho president na for na kotena ho. Now, Bedroom, yeah, to wait and fire, yeah, campaign, our friends at Lego or university campuses. Look at NPP and Lusu, Lego. And now, when the ballot bus for 2 or say, and if we enter about more one, then tomorrow. For someone who said, and his father, and his father, Coco, if you are for it in the Ghana, there are Eric Opoku, our Dr. Eric Opoku, a Greek minister. The Casa of the Krumha for program is to be ABC says a mobile month to be MTL was 6,500 now more canoa. Then, Yanyamo, or catch a host they say, now say Bruce Anwa, or mobile Chess or Poli or Body and I say Media. Home Casa Mokan. I will because I said with John Tabama. I think I was Remuka. And I met Uncle H. Sika betu ye kura no amoye campaign say nurse ti my MPP and my man to about my MPP because MPP to get your more and you get 3,100 and on betu ye really sa 3,100 and now the no say and this one tissue below the woman here ye jail care for Abu 3,100 almost say and no quite yo no my baby. Your whole check 2,587. When you are now see, I'm going to call. Then is for a Coco fire mobile. Every. You know, say, and this was a on the walk, but you must say, I am true. Economy no any in so. Say the economy was in so, and it's going to be. Up the pine be so sheep farmers and then ya take a cocoa so Matientia. When the cocoa can forecast 11 billion. 10 billion cities, somewhere release somewhere around 4.2 billion. And Yakane now cocoa cratchy for now more talk cocoa. Almost what G Busia and a toy. What the action? It is sky more. What they go to bank interest in the account. And find my cocoa, it is still cocoa for the Jomokai. Romote, cocoa boy, went to Jubilee House, emergency meeting, and tea. Almost salary in the African Kai, or Moji. And yes, it's and yet, as I dear we are this for a idea. I said, you make it sure, as Ghana for say, electoral muscle. Because Trump going to be really until next time they will say assembly NDC need be can't during campaign and just someone except for the 2-3 because Trump mobile Bruce Ibenya Akwenya to about you except in making sure say punish or say some throw ya only ya mom can on fast and And mechanics are not a part to say there is a trend. Maybe we are the first, no, they anti us here. Yes, what they have found job. But when you are the down of Eddie trouble. Okay, it's a one-time premium. The more kind, any before can say that one-time premium. Because he said, Omo the car you want to me again, and I done almost buy 2024 days, okay, you're more kind, yeah, massacre. But Omo to me, and sacra. The more you eat, let's say, Omo to me, and sacra. Now, some are also so, hard, and this is for position, Omo kai. So Omo the mobile within 24 hours, and the air kind of I'm saying, Omo ye from Omo to the but and then on one person a guarantee. Mompeni for the jar to me, and I'm no say on national organizer, era Yami. I see I refer for some investigation. You move the airport, one of the first vice or second vice.
Chama Kutu.
Ura Banga, you say you investigate your party. Yes, sorry, MB before Omonia, and never see the. People are here almost so no tree, no the copper age now said, oh my bonnet. Evidence in the way. But on one crop fire, Galamsey, I can say more of him. What was what to be? And they it's Galamsey, and this is what kind of Sunny and Ada. Nobody winning power, but yeah, I saw more year for Galamsey. Now, Papa said, and then Galamsey, I check to see. On Mancasa, a share on Crawford Kutupa. The resource of almost on Galamsey, because I didn't the island, and then over to Galamsey, wow, your gold ball. Beyond to be to gold or Ghana, J. Okotomba gold ball. 80 Galamsey, 4 Galamsey, no wine or more time go no more. Because gold for a police for an asset security for your corrans are 80, so who want to gold about gold border. Now we are Galamsey, I ain't say Galamsey, apostle, be to me now, will be a apostle. I ain't say for your hammer, air apostle. Almost Tom go number mine. I asked him, seven. NBC 4. I Ghana for say, obey a Galamsey free, by Neno Galamsey apostle. Now, I said back on so NBC 4 war position. More criticizing here, how they trap for. I said, friends and family, government. Among tier, among pet and not dear. Among money says I dear no. I say I mark my age. But who the one? Who father breast so friends and family don't have a hand. And then the other one. Hey, friends, family, lady friends, and brothers. Bibri. Now, I know Granny as I take you to the next level. Say, no, your brother, going to be a kind of technically so acting as president because on any president in the family now.
Nice.
Because, see what you say, no. The private plane have a presidential jet who issue. Into once our friend in years old, Master May to Abra so you, Mamma Ghana, so may to accompany. I have been for us here, put you a half I put the person plate to a note. Not Ghana, more why so conflict of interest situation and arising. Here in power time to say we. Yeah, who wait or president for another person. And yet, I say, President, to not know to say, will fee A, apple B, so person to pass, so person go space, so person pass as I say, Ghana for the taxpayers, and they say, they provide the man on your side. Let me and yet, was your poor Ghana, was your poor. I say, on one, I know after your point changing, I say, whom you know, your president, boom, David. I say a man president who say, or a president of the Republic of Ghana, Nimia on your president. They play no on fan to a man. We president in India, I may have known the party back opposition. December 2028, December 7th, the top now. Now, I swear new government in 2029, January 7th. back opposition. And no, to me, but for now, in India, so there be a conflict of interest. Now, the only one I say, yeah, my same way, the Nippon say president, maybe a table. He was involved in some conflict of interest matters involving the Sun Ford expedition behind the map. And then this year, the Ford be on an aeroplane. India, also and then open Ghana gold, open Ghana bauxite. Now, after the year, we use the plane. No, that's why I mean, so we use them. I mean, so many that a year. This means what they did, I made black voter. All cancer as we are. So, over to me, the amount. That man is there, oh, papa, at a referee. Now, they dear, they have to give you your penalty. They dear your penalty. So, who did I tell her? And you also said, papa, you referee to your penalty.
Yeah.
They dear on your penalty. Because the papa, a referee, you know. The year is about 18 more. And you do 18 more about penalty. 120 years. Now, man, high five probably to the penalty because the soldier penalty. And you know, so I be away a dangerous idea, say, making sure, say, president to make you free. The democracy, you know, 2 years, Ghana.